All right, so I want to talk to you real quickly about the annotated bibliography. That's your first writing project you have to complete for the class. So you should be thinking about which of the topics you're interested in writing about for this sequence. And it might help you to understand a little bit what the annotated bibliography is and what you'll need to do in order to complete it. That way you can choose the perfect topic. So if you look at the handout that I've placed on Blackboard, if you look at the assignment guidelines, you'll notice, first of all, there's really three parts to writing the annotated bibliography. And I want to caution you, the annotated bibliography is not an essay. Don't think about this as an essay. It's not going to look like an essay. You don't write it as an essay. It doesn't function as an essay. The annotated bibliography is exactly what the name indicates. It is a bibliography of the sources that you'll be using for future work, and it's annotated, which basically is just a fancy way of saying you've put some robust notes um, along with the sources, so that when you look back on it, you know what you found and how you wanted to use it, so that you can then use it again in the future without having to go back and find it again and reread it in its entirety. So it's really a research tool for you. It's very, very valuable and a good thing to know how to do. So for this particular annotated bibliography, I'm asking for some specific things. The first thing I want you to do is to write a proposal. And the proposal is just 1 to 2 pages. It should be typed and well edited. But the purpose of the proposal is just to explain the topic that you've chosen. So in the proposal, you'll tell me which topic you've chosen to work on. You'll explain why you chose to work on it, what your connection is to the topic, or why you enjoy the topic so much, and maybe even what you hope to learn from reading more about the thing that you're writing on. So if you choose Sasquatch, for instance, you just explain what you find so compelling about Sasquatch, what you're hoping to get out of the narratives, what you're hoping to get out of the research, and so forth. So that's the proposal. It's 1 to 2 pages. It should be well edited, but it's relatively informal. You don't have to cite any sources or anything like that, and it can be in first person. So that's worth 20 points. The second thing you'll have to put together is a list of primary sources. Now that term primary source can be very confusing. If you look up primary sources online, you'll find all sorts of different information because primary sources will change depending on the project. For us, primary sources mean any of the narrative that you're collecting to discuss your topic. So for instance, let's say you go with option 2 and you want to write about Rapunzel. Then for this, your primary list will be all the versions of Rapunzel that you can track down. You should obviously have some of the big sort of traditional printed versions. You should have a Grimm's version and that sort of thing. And then you should also look for different types of media. So if you were doing Rapunzel, you'd have a couple of those printed fairy tale versions. You would also have maybe a couple of cartoon versions. You might have the movie Tangled, the Disney movie Tangled, based on Rapunzel. You might use Into the Woods, which has a Rapunzel character in it. Whatever. There might be some paintings that you like of Rapunzel that you would use, or a poem about Rapunzel, or I don't know, maybe Rapunzel's featured in a video game you want to use. It can be anything, right? So you want to gather as many narrative sources as you can. I require at least 8, so that's your bare minimum. And it's important to understand it's not a hypothetical list. So you can't just write down all the stuff you can think of. You actually have to find the sources, you have to have access to the sources, and then you need to document them MLA style. So each entry on the bibliography has to be formatted according to the MLA, and you can find those guidelines in your Norton Field Guide, or you can use the library website through CSCC, and they have a citation guide, an online citation guide there. So you want to gather those sources, and you want to create that bibliography in the MLA style. You will do brief annotations for that primary source list, 2 sentences each. The first sentence is just a 1-sentence summary of the source. This is a video game version XYZ, something like that, just so it's clear exactly what the source is. And then 1 sentence of evaluation where you basically say what you like about the source, what was compelling about the source, or why you just chose to include that source on your list, because it's an exclusive list. So that's what you would do for the primary list. Again, that's worth 20 points. And it's important to have that good list of narratives available. If you find 12 things, go ahead and put 12 on there. Okay, don't worry about overloading it. Just put as much on there as what you can find, but everything on there should be documented MLA style. Then the big thing is the annotated bibliography proper. 60 points will be your secondary research. And by secondary, I just mean the scholarship that you find through the library databases. Okay, and for your primary list, you can look anywhere to find your sources. You can look online, you can talk to people you know, get personal testimony, you can use books, comic books, video games, whatever. But for the secondary research, you have to use the library databases. Right? This is not negotiable. You can't use Google Scholar or anything like that. You have to go through the library databases. Part of this is I want to make sure you understand not only the difference in the types of research that's available, but how to use these really good resources that the college provides you. Okay, so there will be some material up on conducting research through the library databases, so you can get those tutorials. But that's the expectation. You need to find at least 6 sources. And again, if you find more, that's fantastic. The more sources you find, the better for you. So if you can find 8 or 10 that you really like, you'll only have to do full annotations for 6. So you can add those extra sources to the list and look at them later, and that will be to your benefit. So let's say for a second you chose to do option 3, and your profession that you're shooting for is architecture. So you've gathered your narratives already, your primary source list about architects, and now you're doing the research through the databases. Naturally, what you're going to want to do is go in and find the primary publications for architecture. You'll find those handful of scholarly magazines that are produced for architects. You're going to read some of the most current scholarship about architecture. And what you're looking for are references to fields outside of architecture. So how are architects using biology? How are architects using engineering? How are architects using environmental science or philosophy or literature or music, whatever it is, to impact current architecture? And then you would take those articles and you would produce a bibliography, MLA style again, and this time you would have more robust annotations. And so 100 to 150 words, you have a few sentences summarizing the main argument, so you'll have to read that article. You have to summarize the main argument, and then you'll have a couple of sentences of evaluation where you explain, again, what you thought was so compelling about this, what you thought was so interesting about this, or just whatever the reason is that you chose to include this on your list as opposed to something else. Now, if you're using, let's say, topic 1 and you're writing about Sasquatch, and you've already located your Sasquatch narratives, so now you're doing the research, we want to keep consilience in mind, right? So you don't want just a whole bunch of articles from, say, anthropologists about their explanations or their thoughts of Sasquatch. You want to reach out to different fields. So if you find a couple from anthropology, then you want to shift over and look at some that are published maybe in a biology journal. Maybe you'll find something that's published in like a psychology journal or a social sciences journal. Maybe there's a folklorist somewhere who published something in a journal about literature that deals with Sasquatch. You want to look at as many broad fields as you can, because again, we're trying to practice consilience, and so you have sources you're going to bring in from different places. So that's what the annotated bibliography is. It's a proposal of what topic you want to work on. It's gathering up those primary sources, those narratives, so that we can have narratives to talk about in the essay down the road, and then also then the research, the scholarship that comes through the databases where people in different fields are discussing your topic, and that's going to be very important to gather up. And then I've given you the checklist. You should be able to go through the checklist and see everything that's required in terms of formatting for the annotated bibliography. A couple things you want to keep in mind is you are writing summaries. So in a summary, there'll be no quotations. Make sure you're using authors' names. Refer to the author by their last name once you've given their full name. And again, no direct quotations. You're summarizing. Don't respond. Okay, resist the urge to react or to respond. They're going to make an argument about something. You might disagree. This is not the place to talk about that. You're simply presenting their argument in a summary, and then you can evaluate why you think this is something you want to use, and if you want to take issue with what they've said and argue with them, or if you're really passionate and want to agree with them, save that for your essay.